Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for rejoining us again. I'm Yvonne Gamble, your host at the UNCSW 66. And as you know, this is our 66th convening here in 2022. Yes, it has been 66 years that the United Nations has been convening the status of women. And what we do is we listen to the voices of women across the world and we find out, what's going on in their world, what is happening with them. This year, our theme is on climate change. And as you know, that is item number, that is one of our goals, number 13. And we're trying to do as much as we can to decrease that footprint, down to hopefully no more than 2% greenhouse gases by 2030. So that is still our goal. I am the CEO of Sandpete Financial Group, and we're a venture capital firm. And I'm also the co-founder of Women Leading Change Now, who brings this to you every year. Today, I have with me a treat for you. And I say she is a treat because she is a gemstone. And in that, she actually is the head over Authentic Sacred Design. But I'm not going to give away any of her trade secrets. I'm going to bring up for you Ann Metcalfe, and she's going to tell you a little bit about herself and a lot about her take on our health, climate change, and back to the garden. So let me bring Ann on board, and then we will actually get a taste of all that she has to bring to us. Ann, so nice to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Yvonne. It's such an honor for me to be here with this program that you've got. I'm just so excited. And a little bit about me, I'm still teaching kindergarten to grade 7 as a substitute teacher. So I go into different classes all the time, and I love it. I taught schoolyard gardening for almost 15 years, and that is becoming my new passion. In the past 2 years, I've been learning about gut health, and that's why I call myself a gut health advocate. 22 years ago, I had sarcoidosis, which was an autoimmune disorder, and I treated that by eating raw food for over a year. And my body healed itself. So that's why I know that when we eat healthy food, our body has that beautiful divine design that can heal itself. So, 2 years of just diving deep into so much fascinating information that I didn't know. And I'm just excited to be able to share that with our listeners.
Well, I am so happy to have you do that. Before we go into your actual topic, I did want to ask a question. You said that you, and I've heard this before, where you went and you began to eat the raw foods, and that helped you to heal. What is it about the raw food diet that really does, it seems to heal and heal quickly?
Well, it took me about a year of eating raw food, and what I realized now was that it was all plant-based.
Okay.
It wasn't vegan, sort of using those sort of headings, but it was a vegetarian. So it was lots of greens. I had tons and tons of greens and papaya, and I was gifted a beautiful human being who knew how to create incredible meals with raw food. I don't do that anymore. I'm now following an Ayurvedic way of it's a philosophy and it's a way of living and a way of eating, and their belief is they cook most of the food for our easy digestion. So my Ayurvedic coach said, you must have a strong constitution to have I spent a few years on the raw food diet, because her Ayurvedic understanding is that cooked food is more easily digestible, and that's a 5,000-year-old practice. So that's what I'm encompassing more nowadays.
Hmm. Okay, because that's interesting. When we think about like you said, that's an easier digestion with the cooked foods. But does that take us away from what the body systems are there to do? Considering, I guess the reason I'm asking the question in this manner, and that is considering that uh, stoves don't really stoves and cooked. I know fire is out there, but the whole cooking is not really a design of nature. That's more or less a invention of man. So my question would be, then the design of our bodies, it would appear, would have been to have ingested uncooked.
Mm. Yeah, and that's a good question. And I think that's part of this. I don't want to say polarity, but you've got the people who eat raw, and then the vegan, vegetarian, omnivore. And what did our ancestors eat? And initially, it probably was a lot of uncooked food, and I suppose we probably didn't live as long either. There was other challenges.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't live as long, and now we are living longer. And I mean, one of the arguments with the raw food versus the cooked food is the nutrients and the vitamins and the minerals. And I think our digestive systems, I mean, it's all about the gut microbiome and what are we feeding it, so that it can thrive. Because without a healthy microbiome, we're not healthy. And
Correct.
I think science is helping uh, demonstrate I think, sort of the immense capacity of our body. Because now I think recent research is showing that a lot of our diseases are caused by the inflammation in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the Ayurvedic understanding of cooking the food, but also adding spices. And adding spices to the food assists with our digestion. And maybe that's part of the answer to what you were asking.
Okay, so it's all of those things have to go in together. That's why the spices, really are there, because that's a part of it. Because what we term as just simply a spice could could have been considered, a medicine. Well, in many instances, it
Mhm.
was.
It was.
Most of what we just take as a turmeric, for instance, we just take that as a standard spice, and turmeric actually was a medication, that was used. That's how it was termed, and now we call it a spice. So yes, okay, I think I get that. I think I get that.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
yeah. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to let you talk to us more about our health, climate change, and getting back to the garden, because it looks like
Okay.
that's where we're heading. That's where we need to get back to.
Awesome. And we do. We need to get back to the garden for our health, in many different ways. So, our gut buddies are this whole gut microbiome within our digestive system, and they serve us so beautifully. We've got viruses and bacteria and a little bit of fungus and different things within our gut. And then when we eat whole, healthy food, our gut buddies, which is what I call them, are happy. And when they are happy, you don't have the inflammation, and you've got this healthy body where we can thrive and live long. And so that's part of that's what I've been interested in the last couple of years. And when you asked me to sort of speak on this about climate change, I'm going, whoa, what do gut buddies have to do with climate change? And so that led me down another rabbit hole of doing more research and looking at, okay, so we are consumers. We make choices on what we feed ourselves, what we put on our bodies with our clothes, and what we purchase at the store. And what, and especially women, what are we putting on our body with lotions and creams and shampoos and all those kinds of things? And certainly in Canada and probably the United States, more than say other countries, when we go shopping for food, we're looking for that perfect apple, that perfect potato. And we don't want apples with scabs on them. And we don't want misshaped vegetables. We want them perfect. Well, and what happens to the imperfect food? A lot of that gets thrown out, it gets wasted. And so there's that element of our expectation and what happens with the food. And then with clothing, if women knew the damage to the waterways and the air because of the production of the clothing, they might change their minds because we don't have enough knowledge. And I think through education, especially for women, because I don't know, not all societies, of course, but some of us look at changing our fashion all the time. Well, what happens to those used clothes? Developing countries don't want them anymore because it's interfering with their local production of fabric and their own clothing industry. So we've got a few things to answer to that. And then, of course, some of the creams that we put on our body absorbs what we put on our skin within like 25 seconds or less. And so we need to be more conscious. And part of my thinking these days is almost like my mantra is conscious eating, conscious living. And when we're more conscious about what we are eating, using, wearing, then we can make wiser choices because all that affects the climate. When we think about the carbon dioxide in the air, what do we do with all the extra carbon? And we know that some of the reasons for that climate change, we've got deforestation. Well, why are we cutting down the forest? It might be for building new homes, and it's also for food production. And what are we doing in that destruction of that forest and the whole biome that was living there that's gone? And so our food choices do make a difference on the climate. And you've got the agricultural industry. In ancient times, there were smaller farms, and we were physically and even, I think, spiritually connected to the land. First Nations people have that deep understanding, and they honor the animals that they kill. They thank them for their food, and they had that beautiful connection with the earth and the soil. And I think modern civilizations have gotten away from that, and we've forgotten that. And our population's increasing, so there's more demand for food. And how do we deal with that on a global basis? I mean, I have a backyard garden, which will be using more and more and planting a greater diversity of food, because back to our gut buddy, our microbiome needs that diversity. We need a wide variety and not just the same old potatoes, peas, and carrots. There is so much more out there. And I'm grateful for where I live because they can bring in different foods that maybe in my climate I can't grow. And I can come in from other countries. And yes, there is a loss of what I call the life force energy of the food when it gets transported, because a lot of it is harvested before it's fully ripe, so it can withstand the transport. And so the more and more we can eat locally from our local farmers, because they have their heart and soul in the soil of the food. And by that, buying local, we can also make a slight change in the whole climate, um, the changes in the whole carbon exchange.
Mhm.
Because yeah.
I'd like to, you said something that, kind of struck a chord with me there as far as the life force energy of the food and how, when we do bring foods in, from other places, we lose some of that. Many of the foods that we're looking at are also what they call GMO, genetically modified organisms. Does that also affect the gut biome?
Oh, I believe it does, and I think research is showing that it does, because it's genetically engineered. It's not the original plant source that it was, and our body has we're this beautiful design where the body is intricately connected with the food from the natural realm. And I'm not talking about so the hybridization, how they got little corn to bigger corn. That was through a hybridization, but not genetically engineered, because they're adding two components or more to that end product. And the body is going, like, what is that? And I think research coming in the future will actually prove that that is not a good thing. Some people they're like the canary in the coal mine, because their body is so sensitive to that genetically modified food that they get sick, and it's hard to pinpoint what is happening to their body.
Is this can we, things like Crohn's disease? It seems to be almost a norm. Certain types of diseases, of the bile system seem to, those words have become things we say just as easily as we say common cold. This person has Crohn's disease, and now that's just a standard disease that they live with, and they flourish and do go about their day-to-day business. But is that a disease that actually came about because of the foods, the processing of the foods we eat?
Yes, and I think the bigger umbrella of the processed food, because you've got genetically engineered, which is processed. You've got processed food, which you go to the grocery store, and this is where the power of women is so, the potential for women to change what's on the store shelf. Certainly in Canada and the United States, it's so easy to go and buy an instant meal. You go to the shelf, it's already processed, you put it in the pot, you boil it, and ta-da, that's your meal. And that's not, the life force energy isn't in that food anymore. It's been so processed, and the body doesn't understand what it is. And then on top of that, you've got toxins that are in our water, in our air, and in the food. This new one, the glyphosate, which is part of the chemical additives that they're putting to grow food better. Well, that's actually destroying the gut microbiome. And when that's destroyed, you've got the leaky gut, you've got the increase in fatty liver disease, and the whole body, the harmony that it's used to having with the fresh whole food is totally out of balance. And then you get inflammation. And nowadays, that's what they're saying. A lot of these chronic conditions, it's actually inflammation that is starting in the gut. And with that inflammation, like 70% of our immune system starts in the gut.
Mm.
And so you haven't got you've weakened the immune system to what's out there coming at you from other people, the air, the toxins from perhaps your drinking water. There's so many different things that come into that, and I think it's just really and that's why go back to the garden, go back, grow your own food, and buy local, and that will assist in. It's a small piece, Yvonne, when we look at the agricultural business and the monocropping that's going on. So the farmers they grow corn or soy, and those ones most of those have been genetically engineered or modified, or they're fed these not fertilizers, but they're also pesticides to keep the weeds down. And then, so you've got this culture, this agriculture. It's so big because we're trying to feed so many people. But in that process, what we've done is we've killed the soil.
Mm-hmm.
We've killed the microbiome in the soil. And the microbiome of our gut and the soil are very similar. It's just the soil is more diverse. And so when we destroy that microbiome, and it's interesting, this relationship with the plants that I've just learned, the plants use 30% of their energy to look after the funguses and the bacteria in the soil, and those help create a healthy plant. So you've got the biome in the soil and the plant itself working together so that they can have this delicious looking, it's not only a delicious carrot, but it actually has a life force energy.
Okay.
And that's where the regenerative farming is coming to the forefront.
Now, can you talk about the regenerative farming a little more? We're hearing that word, they're throwing out so many new terms to us. And so, I mean, what is this regenerative farming? I mean, what are they regenerating?
Well, they're regenerating the soil. They're regenerating the environment of the farm, and the soil is part of it, and that's where the big link is to the carbon exchange. So, but and they're still working on what is the definition of regenerative farming.
Right.
But basically, it's generally organic. You are using a wide diversity of plants and animals in some farming, and you can see a return to the environmental systems, like the nature itself. So this one couple in New York left New York, bought this huge piece of property. Took them 7 years to regenerate the soil. It also involves a lot of green grass, different crop covers. So instead of just, and the other part of that is no or hardly any tilling. So when you look at these films and these huge tillers are going and chopping up the soil, what's happening is that they are killing the fungus that works with the plants that keeps the soil alive. And so they talk about how the vegetables don't have the minerals in them anymore that they used to have. Part of that is because of the tilling. The soil is no longer alive, and without that life force energy, our plants, they may look like the same carrot, but energetically, they're not the same.
They're not the same. And
No.
so it's almost, yeah, it's almost like, um, I know many of the vegetables that we would eat just naturally before, such as potatoes, those sorts of things like that, corn, like you're saying, carrots, they, instead of in celery making you leaner, it's almost like they make you heavier because they're literally nothing but cellulose. They're just simply fat. They're just, there's no substance, and you can even taste the difference. I grew up on a farm in Michigan, and we would take every other year. It was a 20 acre, it was a blueberry farm, but we would take every other year for the garden areas, and actually would bring in what they call black dirt, and that's where you're talking about. Then so that black dirt was like, it was rich in phosphorus, rich in all the different minerals, and I can't even think of just the number of minerals it had. And they would spread that over the whole area, and that area wouldn't be planted on for another 2 or 3 years. And that it would be acres and acres of black dirt, and then they would begin to plant on it. And like you said, you're absolutely right. There would be no tilling of that soil. There would be, no doing anything to it. It just, however it grew naturally.
Right.
And yeah, it grew. If there were any weeds that came up, they came up naturally, and then they were allowed to be there because they have a purpose as well. We call them weeds because, just like you were saying earlier, how we don't want to see that apple that's not perfectly shaped, but on the inside that apple is fine. It's just the shape is different. Just like people, we're not all shaped the same. We don't all have color. We don't, simply throw them out, throw the baby out with the bathwater. We don't.
Yeah,
do
exactly.
that,
Yeah.
So those weeds, they serve a purpose. And so there's certain ones that you never bring those weeds down. You always keep them there. And and when you do, it does make a lot of difference. And I can see, and I know I'm always running out and kind of getting on to my gardener, because they'll come in the cold season, like now it's the winter time, and we're in Atlanta, so we don't have the snow, and they want to cut the grass, and I'm like, it's no grass growing. Don't go out there, because that whole chopping, even if a little bit might bud up, let that come up. That's to help the rest of the grass, or the leaves. They want to take the leaves and blow them all away. What's interesting is this. I said, now that's very interesting. I said, you want to blow the leaves away, rake them up, right? Mulch them down. And then in the springtime, you're coming and knocking on the door saying, will you buy some more fertilizer for the grass? Well, had you left those leaves down there, you wouldn't have you'd have a beautiful green lawn when the springtime came. And so I think we finally came to an agreement. After a couple of years, he would not cut the grass after October, and nor would he rake the leaves.
Yeah.
Nor would he rake the leaves. And that grass, in the summertime, it's like, oh my God, what did you do? I said, I just left it alone and let it do what it's do.
Yeah, exactly. And I know with agriculture, and we're trying to feed many people, but these regenerative farmers are changing how they're doing it. So they might have cows, and they move the cows around, and so the chickens come in and they eat the peck at the poop, and they poop, and that's regenerating the soil. It's adding nutrients to the soil. And they've also noticed that with this farm in New York was that they had chickens, but they also had foxes that were getting at the chickens. But the whole system evolved so that in the end you had owls coming in that were looking after the voles that were chewing up things. So the whole nature, the whole environmental nature, with all the wild part and the farmer kind of working together. And in the States, they've got, I think 5% of all the farms are regenerating farms. And so that needs to increase, because when the more green you have, so they've got these grasses in between, say, the apple trees.
Mm-hmm.
And so that the soil, all the plants contain the carbon. The soil contains the carbon. And with having that regenerative farming, it's capturing more carbon dioxide from the air into the soil. And so that's reducing that some numbers are quite substantial, and others are saying, well, not quite that much. And then the carbon that's locked in the oceans gets released to the atmosphere, goes back into the soil, into the plants, and the oceans become less toxic because they've released this carbon sink that isn't particularly healthy for them. And so there's this beautiful synergy, this beautiful cycling of the carbon when we change how we farm our food. So that's one way. And actually San Francisco they have a goal of removing all of their food waste from the landfill.
And how are they going to? That's interesting. You're going to have to just give us a tidbit. I know you don't know the whole thing, but you brought the conversation up.
Well, I mean, there are composting in Vancouver, where I live. They have curbside composting. So it goes into these facilities that composts restaurant food, homeowner food, and we're still working on apartment building homes and how to make that workable. And so they compost it, and people can actually go and buy this compost and add to their garden. Now, there's the issue, sometimes you might get a few weed seeds in there because you don't know where all those weeds are coming from. Weeds like morning glory, I actually put in the garbage because their root system are so strong that they can last for like 7 years. And I go, okay, I don't really want to give that to my neighbor for their garden. But anyway, so that's for me, when we are using our backyard garden, the local gardens, and agricultural businesses. And for them, it's a huge shift, Yvonne, in how they do things. Mm-hmm. And we need to come to that a new way of thinking. And it's that interesting. I do a little bit of energy work with my friend, and my Trust Your Gut course was learning how to trust that intuitive knowing that we have in our body that helps us decide what food is best for us, because we're different. Our gut microbiomes are individual. So you might like green apples, but red-skinned apples don't sort of work really well with you. And same with a lot of other food. So, our body has these preferences. To the most degree, our systems can handle most food when you do it gradually. So we decided to look at the energy. And Albert Einstein himself, and some claim that it wasn't Albert Einstein, somebody else, but whoever said it, was that everything in life is vibration. Mm-hmm. And quantum physics.
That was Nikola Tesla.
Nikola Tesla. Everything's got a vibration and a frequency. And so my friend has a radionics machine. Her name is Anita Lawrence. And so we were playing with that with organic food and non-organic food. And we were able to test the frequency of the food. And so we were cutting little snippets of, we had strawberry and cabbage, and we had two kinds of cabbage. One that came from, they were both organic. One came from a local community agricultural, CSA, and where the farmer provides food, and you go and they create baskets for you every week or every 2 weeks, and you go down and you pick up what they've harvested. And so I had to beautiful cabbage that I had bought from the schoolhouse garden back in December. And I had a purple cabbage that I bought at the local store, and it was also organic, but I actually don't know where it came from. And so we were measuring the megahertz, and for this radionics machine, the megahertz value of say 279 or 229 means that that's healthy for you. And if it's less than that, it's not doing your body much good. And so the purple cabbage, which came from someplace else, registered at 2.1 megahertz. But the cabbage that came from my local gardener, the farmer, registered at 229, which is where most of all the food we tested was 229 megahertz, which means they were pretty healthy. So we're going, okay, how do we, as empowered beings, and knowing that everything is frequency, can we change that? And so we used the power of intention. And we had this, I took the little piece, we tested it, the piece of the vegetable, the strawberry and the cabbage, and we tested it first. And then I said a little prayer, holding that piece of food in my hand. And basically I said, thank you to all the healthy nutrients for our meal, for nourishing our bodies, for our whole optimum wellness. And I am grateful. And when we put it back into the radionics machine, the value almost doubled. And
wow.
Everything we tested went up to 429 to 435 megahertz, whoa, which your body is going, wow, like it and because we are this incredible collection of consciousness, of frequency, our body resonates, brings it up. Mm-hmm. And the power of our hands and the power from our love. And I'm thinking of women. Women are the center of all this. We can be the change. We are the cooks. We are the shoppers. We prepare the food for our families. You know, especially in developing countries, the women are actually doing they're actually growing the food. And I'm going, Anita and I are going, this is huge. So that with the power of intention, and there was somebody else, a Dr. Masaru Emoto, back in the late 1990s, early 2000, he was studying the crystalline structure of water and using words and prayer and intentions, and he changed the structure of the water. We are 70 to 80% water. The earth is the same. The plants, the food we eat is all water. It's water-based. And so when we're sending that intention and just thanking the food for the nutritional benefit that it's giving us, it raises the vibration of the food. And I suspect what's happening is that crystalline structure is reforming. So even that poor little cabbage that was only 2 megahertz came all the way up to 429 megahertz.
Wow. Okay.
So I'm going to be putting more of that information. I'll create a graph, and we're going to do more research on the soil and the seeds. So when we're planting our own garden and working with our soil, and especially with, I'm thinking of these developing countries where they are using, some of them are traditional methods, and some of them do use the tilling, and it needs, a lot of funding and more research, and assisting these women in, certainly our country, but and we need to be educated in terms of what we're buying on the store shelf. The women in developing countries, they don't have a store shelf. They don't have mega malls. they have what's in front of them in their backyard, or in their sharing with their neighbors and sharing the different food that they grow. And so how can we support them with education, with certainly with funding, and looking at this regenerative farming, and how can we apply that concept to these smaller communities? They have different needs. The soil is different, the environment's different. But you know what, Yvonne, we're in a space and age where everything is possible.
Exactly. And that we have to look at it from this standpoint. It's like the pendulum on the clock. It swings both ways. If we did it, we can do it better. We can do it again, or
Yeah.
we can reverse it, because all of this, we did it. So, and some of it has to start with that center of change. And that is, you have to stop doing some of those things that we have been doing
Yeah.
for many years, that is not only damaging our bodies, but it's also damaging the climate. And we've got to get back into our gardening and into some of those ways. And some of those ways are truly simpler than you think. And when you think about years ago, I'm pretty sure you saw your mothers, your grandmothers. They sang to their plants. They talked to their plants. They'd be out farming. They'd be singing, and that crop would be growing. And it's just that natural vibration. It's the natural order of things, where the world responds to us. And that's what we have to realize. We cannot get away. If we're going to live on planet Earth, then we've got to live with planet Earth. We can't just simply live on it as though we're standing on top of it's a box, and we're just here standing on top of it and building what we want and creating our own food and all that sort of thing like that. It's like, no, that's not how the earth was designed. The earth was designed to be like a caretaker, if you will, of us. And so therefore the caretaker cares for you and you care for the world. It's a symbiotic relationship. And that's what we have to actually get back to. With that, I want now Anne is just such a gem. And now we talked about her gut health, and we talked about her gut health, Agabus, being an advocate, for that, which she is. She's an author, she's a teacher. It's all been illustrated to you. I want her to talk about this authentic sacred design that she has. She even has an app that she has designed, and I took a look at that app. You can get it out on Apple, as well as if you go even to this link, you can also download Android. If you have Android, you put in your Android information and you pull up the Android app. So if you would, tell us a little bit about the app. I saw it. It had calendar, it had a lot of different places and things. Just tell us, what will we do with this app?
Well, thanks for asking, Vaughn. For me, that app is a playground, and it's a place for us to land. I have different topics in the app. I've got healthy living. I've got mindfulness practices. I've got a little bit on the gut microbiome. I've done some master classes on what is the microbiome, how do spices help with the healing of our body, our gut. And so that those are available on my app. And I have a reference directory where I've invited other people who are heart-centered. They are concerned about your health, your mental health, your spiritual health, your physical health. And they have that ability I have them interviewed and their contact information. So it's a resource, is what it is. A resource on conscious eating, conscious living. And the authentic sacred design is who we are. And when we've talked about the design of the soil, the earth, the plants, and the food we eat, and this interconnectedness, and developing a deeper relationship with all of that and with each other? And how can we support each other? And so the app is many things. I have quotes from the Dalai Lama, who I was graced to shake hands with 5 years ago. And so there's uplifting things, there's information. Some of it might be a bit shocking or a bit weird. And if you don't understand about the energy that Tesla and Einstein and Dr. Emoto were talking about, that's all in there for you to just explore. Because in order for us to be that change, we need to be willing to see all sides of things. And some things fit into our belief systems, and sometimes we need that little tree shaking so that we go, oh, all right, I hadn't thought about that. And how do we make those changes for the betterment of ourselves? Because when we are peaceful within ourselves, that peace, the earth receives it. It's just like singing, the singing gardeners, our ancestors would sing in the garden, and people would sing to their plants because that's a frequency, it's a sound, and the sound of joy and love. And so for me, it's a place for people to land, to be informed and to find peace. I've got a quaking aspen meditation that I had somebody co-create the music, and it's just sitting there looking at the rivers and the quaking aspens and feeling the connection with the earth. And I think that's partly what this talk is about, is getting that reconnection to the earth, to ourselves, and to our spirit, and connecting with the spirit of everything.
Wow. Well, you heard it here first, people. This is Ann Metcalfe, and she is truly authentic. And this is her website where you can actually go and get more information, as well as you saw the app link. And there's also going to be an app link at her AuthenticSacredDesign.com. And if you'd like to email her, go out to rosiesjoy11@gmail.com, and you can definitely reach out to her. I'm going to give you, as my guest, the last word, and then we can actually thank our guest for joining us today. But I would like, Ann, you have just been such a pleasure. I have learned so much, and now that I have downloaded the app, now I know how to use it. So thank you.
Oh, and Yvonne, I think my word is gratitude. Gratitude for who I am, my connection to Source, to God, to the earth herself. And I will leave that. And I also add joy. And just create joy in your life with every moment, because every moment can be that joy. Thanks so much, Yvonne.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ann.